Welcome to the talk on decentralized front ends with Skynet and our product Homescreen. There are, can I take this off? Since I can't look at my computer. So my name is Matthew Seavey. I'm the engineering manager at Skynet Labs. In lieu of an intro, I'll start with a question, the kind of frame for this talk, which is, should we decentralize front ends? And phrased betterly, are we really building permissionless systems if we are using centralized points of entry? So we have all of this great decentralized tech that people are building, but still a lot of the times, I'm going to put this back, sorry. Tried. A lot of the times, the apps and websites are still hosted on centralized points like Amazon and Netify and DigitalOcean. So where does that leave us? So thinking about how we can support decentralized front ends, we have to first kind of start with decentralized storage. So for those that are, in different levels of understanding decentralized storage, it's a key piece of the Web3 infrastructure. At best, they are trustless, permissionless ways for users to be able to access their data without going through any point of centralized storage. Basically, anything that isn't stored on-chain, so any files, web apps, NFTs, these are all things that can be stored in a decentralized manner and supported by one of the great decentralized data storage networks. So some of these... This is going to be a... There we go. Oh, goodness. All right. Whew, we're getting there. Decentralized networks like Skynet, like IPFS, like Arweave. I'm a little bit biased in that I think Skynet is a great option to consider. And so giving kind of quick background on what Skynet is. So Skynet is actually made by the same team that started Saya back in 2014. So we built Saya as a decentralized data storage marketplace and kind of created the Airbnb of data. So just like Airbnb created an open marketplace for renters and hosts to exchange physical space, Saya created an open marketplace for renters and hosts to exchange digital space, all in a completely trustless way. So Saya was designed in a way that really prioritized the individual's data storage and focused on security from that standpoint, which then created some issues in terms of how to then share that data, which is very important and useful when we think about the web. So that's kind of where Skynet came in. So here's a kind of quick diagram to kind of see the relationships. We have the Saya network, and we have our storage, disks that our hosts are running that make up the Saya network. Skynet is then kind of a layer 2 on top of that then allows points of entry for users to be able to access this decentralized data storage network in a nice, easy way. So one of the big barriers to entry for using decentralized storage is kind of the technical hurdle of needing to run your own node, right? You need to know how to run a node. You need to understand cryptocurrency. You need to understand the wallets. There's a huge learning curve in being able to do that in a correct, safe way. And Skynet kind of switched that and allowed for a super easy way for users to be able to access that and basically took Saya to the web. I don't know if I should be pointing this in a different direction. Aha. So, kind of to put simply, Skynet kind of enabled this idea of a decentralized web and taking that idea of decentralized storage from Saya to the web and allowed users to interact in a way that they didn't have to even know about blockchain. You don't have to know about cryptocurrencies. They go to a website that looks like any other Web 2 website. They can drag and drop files, upload, store content, and share content that's all being supported by the powerful Saya blockchain underneath. So we were super excited about that. So then, kind of what does accessing data on a decentralized data storage network look like? So kind of in general, there is the process of you upload data and you get back this cryptographic link that points to that data on the network. So this is an example of what Skylinks look like. So you can, these common Web 2 looking URLs are public web portal access points. So people can still run their own node and still run their own portal, but they can also kind of offload that to a kind of a provider to be able to access it just like they would in the web. And so if you upload through one portal, you can immediately access it through another portal. So then kind of taking it back to front ends and web apps. And so, is it kind of overkill to be thinking about how do we decentralize the front end of a web app? It's just a website, what's going on, as long as like the underlying technology is sound, kind of like what does it matter? And I think there's, a lot of concerns from a developer point of view. It's gonna might be overly complicated. But we kind of have seen in recent times that more and more websites are kind of having these issues, whether it's unintentional bugs pushed out to developers that are then impacting users, whether it's malicious code that's actually being injected and then impacting users, or it's regulatory pressures and developers having to put in additional restrictions that then impact users. And so OneInch is a great example where they have already started integrating with Homescreen, so now they don't have to their users don't have to worry about this anymore. So why don't we decentralize our front ends? And from a developer perspective, a lot of the time the concerns are that not all Web 2 patterns are translated, right? It's a new tech, like it's hard. I got to make compromises. There's limited framework support, or it's not performant. I think that's always been a concern. Like starting kind of in the crypto space, people think about the finance side of things and thinking about block times. Like I don't want to wait all this time for my data to show up. So why should we decentralize with Skynet? So while not all Web 2 patterns translate, there is a very performant cross-ecosystem framework that supports the vast majority of architecture that you're going to be building. If there's full support for GAPC, React Router, and dynamic routing of web apps, so kind of a lot of those concerns are handled. And also there's we're not going to go into too deep, but Skynet is incredibly performant and already seeing on par performance with kind of centralized alternatives. So your users are not having to sacrifice their UX in terms of load times just because it's a decentralized front end. And so really there's no reason not to. And so one of the things that we have focused on at Skynet is really ensuring that we are building tooling and building Skynet in a way that any developer can be building these applications. So we want to allow the totally junior dev to develop on Skynet and build amazing decentralized products just like anyone else. And so to highlight that, one of our first hackathons that we actually had released, one of the top prize winners was someone that was going through a web development bootcamp at that time, and this was the first web app they had ever built. They just happened to be in our hackathon. So kind of highlighting it's not complicated. We're not asking users or developers to kind of learn anything new, which also kind of continuing to lower that barrier and make it easier to adopt these technologies. So then the question is, when we upload data to a decentralized data storage network, you get that cryptographic link back that's pointing to this immutable data, but that we're always updating apps, right? So how do you solve for that? How do we get dynamic data on the blockchain? How do we get dynamic data on a decentralized data storage network? So we got a little example here. So we got user Sally. She's following this project, and we have some daily builds of the product that she's using. And so Tuesday comes out, it has its immutable link. She goes to it, uses her app, great, this is exciting, And then Wednesday's build comes out, so it's a new link, new features, but how does Sally know that even exists, right? So she's not going to be able to see that. So that's where we have a mystery. So we have what's called a resolver Skylink, which is a signed Skylink that basically updates an immutable link underneath it. So now the users just have to remember one Skylink, and the developers can keep updating that link underneath. And so the users don't have to remember anything new. So that's very similar to kind of the standard going to a typical URL. But it's still a kind of cryptographic looking link is confusing. Who's going to remember that? People aren't going to know that. So we add support for DNS, ENS, and HNS names. So you can go to, again, standard experience, just like any other Web 2 site. Going to dailybills.com to be able to get the latest and greatest for for your app, right? So that's how you can host, right? So is that enough? I don't think so, because just like we said, now they can follow and update, their decentralized hosted web app. Thursday's build comes out and it's got a bug, right? So we're back to the initial problem of how do we fix that, right? Because we don't want Sally to just blindly update to Thursday's build and then get impacted. So that's where Homescreen comes in. So Homescreen is kind of our attempt at solving, kind of bringing a lot of these pieces together. So similar to kind of your one home screen for the web, so where you can pin all of your favorite decentralized data storage, or not just data storage, any decentralized application. So the way Homescreen works is that it actually will download the application to the user's decentralized data storage and load it from there. So when you go to HackerPaste, is one of our kind of note-taking apps that someone's made. So if you go to HackerPaste, you can download that current version and know that you're always using that version that you trust. Even if they're putting out additional updates, you can wait and verify that this is a one that I want to actually update for. And because Homescreen has that knowledge of that resolver Skylink, it knows if there's an update and can say, hey, user, do you want to update to kind of keep up to date with your current apps that you're working with? So this, again, kind of puts the control of the user in terms of deciding which version of the apps do I want to use, when do I want to update, which updates do I want to follow. And this is all stored on the user's decentralized data storage and loading right from there. There we go. I think I had something before that. Maybe not. Guess not. Cool. Yeah, so then, so that's great. That's super fun. But is it easy to do? Yes. So, so something that, again, kind of focusing on, we want to make this as easy as possible. There should be no hoops that people have to jump through in order to do this. So from a developer perspective, there's, nice automated tooling for, GitHub, for example. You can build automated deployments. So anytime you're pushing code, it's automatically deploying to Skynet and updating your app, which then users can choose to see if they want to update from their home screen. You can add, an add to home screen button right on a project's GitHub repo, so people can add it right from there. They can know from source that this is the app that I want to be using, so they don't even have to go to a website that's potentially, blocked or phishing website or anything. They can go right to the source of the project and kind of, add the application right from there. And deploying to Skynet, it's just like, uploading any other file. Simple drag and drop if people want to do it in a manual setting. And I think, yeah. More information about what I just said? Yeah. And had it been on my computer, I would have showed you some more resources as we were going through, but that is the nature of the beast. So yeah, we continuing to improve the resources for developers and teams that are interested in how to integrate with Homescreen and kind of provide that safety for their users so they can have that control and really have a from start to finish decentralized experience where they're in control of every point of the process. And so there's Homescreen allows for kind of really just closing the gap on that one little piece. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of great projects out there that are building a lot of great decentralized, trustless platforms. There's kind of that one little piece where it's still, still some central hosting provider that's serving that content to their users. And so Homescreen is a great solution for kind of closing out that little gap. Leave this up here real quick. If anyone's interested in reaching out, join our Discord, connecting later on. And look at that. 2 minutes for questions, if anyone has any, or we can talk about it later. Question?
What are the
For developers, free. So right now, the way that kind of payment of data storage is handled for Skynet is through the portals. And so, and portals are then kind of offloading that cost to the users through kind of portal accounts. So you can create an account similar to any other account that you would make with a portal that you are interested in supporting or you trust, and you can then pay for your kind of storage tier or usage with your kind of whatever currency you're interested in. So then that's kind of that dives into kind of some of the ideas of Skynet as a whole in terms of Skynet as an ecosystem and viewing the usage of the web and kind of data usage almost like a utility bill, in that you kind of are always paying for the data that you are using and paying to pin the data that supports that, and then have kind of those easy UX experience of having a kind of like a monthly account with a certain portal. Any other quick questions right at the end, right at the buzzer? So you're saying, okay. So if like Tuesday's build was good, Wednesday's build had a bug in it, and then Thursday's build had the proper fix that you were saying. So the user could, just update all the way to Thursday's build.
But a malicious user could go into Tuesday's build, right? But they'll bug it and still have access to it. Is that possible?
So each user would have their own version of the application stored on their decentralized storage. So if I access Tuesday's build, I download that, and that's stored on my decentralized storage. If I want to go and view that app for Tuesday's build, I'm always loading that because I'm the only one that has access to that. So no one can go in and change and add malicious code that tells me that it's still Tuesday's build but different.
But can someone still access that build ever?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, if like, the GitHub, right, and if they're building their application, like that code is still going to be there in those previous builds and those previous deployments. And it's whether or not the user has control of whether or not they ever have to kind of be forced to interact with that because they can control what version of the application they are viewing. And maybe I'm not answering or understanding the question properly, and we can dive more in detail after. Okay, perfect. All right, cool. All right, well, thank you. Thanks for your patience, and happy to talk afterwards.